Hey crazy friends.
Hey guys.
It's Jay and Francis with Find Your Crazy. We're back this week with another midweek RV family life video. And today we're going to be talking about the not so fun part of your trip prep. We all love planning where we're going, thinking about those great destinations, but planning how to get there and making all of those reservations along the way.
It's overwhelming.
That's not always so much fun.
No.
But today in the video, we're going to talk to you about how we go about that process and hopefully give you some tips that'll help make it a little less stressful for you next time you're ready to head out and have a crazy adventure. All right, so you've picked out that grand destination, that great, amazing place you want to go. But it doesn't matter if you're planning on being gone for a week, a month, or full-time for a year like we are. You've got to plot that course, and you've got to make all those reservations. You've got to find somewhere to park your rig every single night.
Right.
And so in this video, we're going to talk to you about how we have figured out the best way to do that. This isn't the only way, but this is what has worked best for us. This is after 6 months of being on the road full time and making about twice that many reservations.
And cancellations.
Yeah, thanks
and
to COVID, we have made several. At the beginning, we had 2 months worth of reservations before COVID locked us all down. We had to cancel them all and start over. And so we have made quite a few reservations.
Yes.
And so we've refined this process to works best for us, and we hope that's going to work best for you. So the first thing you have to do is you want to plan your route. And for route planning, we use a method that we refer to as the rock method. It's an old preacher analogy. And what it is if you pretend you've got a jar and you want to fill that thing up and you've got big rocks, little rocks, and sand, well, you can't put the sand in first and then the little rocks and then the big rocks because it won't all fit. And so what you do is you put the big rocks in first, they take up the most space, and then you put in all your little rocks around those, and then finally you fill it in with the sand, and then you can completely fill the jar up. And so we do the same thing with our route planning. We start with the places that are the most important, our big end destinations.
Right.
Then we look along that route, plus or minus some, and then we figure out the little places along the way that we want to stop and see. And then we just find stop-off places between those. That's the little sand, the places that don't really matter. We're staying one night right off the road. We're in, we're out. And so that's how we go about doing that. The absolute, hands down, best tool that we have found for doing this is a website called RVTripWizard. It's a great resource. There's a little cost to it, but
So worth
it.
Worth it. Keeps you organized, keeps your route going. You get to see how far you're going. There's so many things that are so helpful visually when you're making such a big route across the country or around different places.
I'm literally on the website every single day.
Yes.
It's on a tab on my phone. It's on a tab on my computer. And every day we're looking at it. And so, just to look at it now as an example, so we're in Hot Springs, Arkansas right now. And so the next big rock, the next thing that we know we want to do is Rocky Mountain National Park. And so I just type in Rocky Mountain National Park. It comes up as a place of interest. So I'm able to click on it and then tell it that I want to spend a night there. And so I'm going to save this as my last stop. And so you can see right over here on the side that it's listed there now. And so now I can go to the map and I can back out and I can see the quickest route to get there. And so that is what it's showing me. So, hey, if you're going from Hot Springs to Rocky Mountain, then here is your quickest path. So that's our big rocks. And so then you go in and you look and you go, okay, what along some alternate routes are some places that we really want to go? And so, for example, we know along this stretch that 2 of our little rocks that we want to do are Tulsa and Dodge City. So then all I have to do is type in Tulsa. And it comes up and I'm able to put it in. And notice I haven't put in any campsites yet. We're still just putting in those rocks. And then our next place is Dodge City.
Super fun place for the boys. gunslinger town. So really excited about that.
And I want to put it in after Tulsa. All right, so now we've kind of got our big and small rocks in, and so you can see it altered the route a little bit, but that's okay. That's what you do. You look and see where you want to go along the way. And so now it's time to start putting in those little rocks, and this is a place that RVTripWizard really shines because one of the neat things about it is you can put in so I'm going to click on Hot Springs, and you can put in from that how far you're wanting to drive. Now for us, we've said this many times on the channel. We try not to drive more than 200 miles in a day. So it gives you these rings on here that you can set up for how many miles you want to go, and you can adjust those. And you can do multiple rings, like a minimum, an average, and a full length. And so it also shows you every on the side. So we can see here that Tulsa is 261 miles from Hot Springs. So that would be something we want to have a conversation about. Is it worth pushing that, or is it not? And so then if it's not, then we're going to go in and we're going to look about halfway between the two. And you'll see that all of these campgrounds, that it populates them all in here. Boom. And so then we just look somewhere that's along the way and we pick a campsite. And we look around and we go, oh, okay, here's about where we want to stay. So then you've got your big rocks, you got your little rocks, and you got your sand and just your stop-off places. And then you just need to start checking about those places. A couple things that you want to make sure about. You want to look and make sure that they've got the amenities that you need. Are they big rig friendly if you're a big rig? Do they have sewer if you need sewer, if you're planning on staying for multiple nights? If you're a big rig and it's the summer and you have to have 50 amp to run both those air conditioners, do they have 50 amp or do they just have 30 amp? And again, RVTripWizard is great for that. So for example, here in this halfway point, if we click on here for more details, we can see under features that this place has pull-through sites. It has 30 and 50 amp. It has sewers. It has showers. You know, if you're a small rig and you have to have a camp shower, what does it have? And so the next thing is to check and make sure it's got all the amenities, facilities.
It'll even tell you like what Wi-Fi, what cell phone signals are good, and so what you're going to be able to access even outside of your rig, but some things that might be important for your work or for your homeschooling or whatever it is that you need, or if you have teenagers like we do and you need Wi-Fi. So you'll be able to see some of those amenities on there as well, which is really great. So those are some nuanced ones. And so then once you've found a roughed out place, you know they've got the amenities, the last thing is to check some reviews. And RVTripWizard does have reviews, which is great. You can click on and see what others have said, but we have found that it's also better to check a couple of other places. While RVTripWizard does have some reviews, what we've found is there's typically not a ton of them. Like there may be 3 or 5 or 6 reviews, which is fine if you don't have anything else, but we have found a couple of other places to look that have really been a lot more helpful. One of them is an app called Campendium. It's a great way to look at these locations because it tends to have a few more reviews and sometimes even more pictures than what RVTripWizard will have, and so that's the second place we look. And then I usually am a Google girl, so I will get on and I will just type in the different types of campgrounds that we're considering, and then I'll put them in, and then I'll look on TripWizard, I will look on Google, and there are tons and tons and tons of reviews, by far and away, so many more reviews, and they're really in depth, and you'll also get a lot of pictures and some really good advice. I do like RVTripWizard because it also will tell you the prices that most people paid, which usually Google really does not, and so this is really helpful. When you use all of them together, you really get a good idea of really where you're going.
And so now you've made your route. You have checked through to make sure that the place that you're looking at has the things that you need and is up to the quality that you need. And then you're ready to make that next step and actually make your reservation.
And so when I started making phone calls, I found some really good tricks for myself. And so one of the things I would say is, number one, my advice would be, before you start making reservations, is to get a notebook. I have found just through the past several months, I've had lots of different kinds, but I have one that has a calendar It really helps to see what your calendar plans are, to write those things in so that you can see how many nights and things like that. I've also have a calendar that has a note section in the back. That's because you're going to get into conversations with people on the phone. They're going to be telling you information. You're going to be asking questions. You're going to get into these great conversations, and you need to be able to write them down. You are making a lot of reservations, especially if you're full-time. You're making a lot of reservations. You're talking to a lot of people, and sometimes multiple people, and then you have to come back and talk to each other about, oh, it's going to be this much. Oh, these amenities are not open. And so you need to have your facts right in front of you so you can remember what campground you're talking about.
And having that visual calendar is really super helpful because we've gotten each other confused multiple times when you're talking about how many days you're staying somewhere versus how many nights you're staying somewhere.
That's really important.
But having it on a calendar where you can draw a line and go, we're from here to here, we're leaving here. Like it just seems to really help us.
It really does. And so I would say that's my number one tip. After that, we have found, and this has taken months of refining, but you need to have some questions that are important. I will tell you, we have shown up at some campgrounds and had not known what time maybe check-in was. I'm going to go over some of these, but there are a lot of questions that you might not think to ask, and we have not thought to ask, and we wish we had. Things that affect
There are no standards. Like every place, because there are so many mom and pop locations, everyone has different rules.
So the first question, well, this is not in any order, but I'm just going to share with you some of the questions. Number one, for us, we're a family that is more than 2 people. I will say the number one thing that hits us is how many people does this reservation include? Is it 2 adults, no children? Because what happens is many campgrounds begin to charge you for extra people. So you need to know that up front, because that is a game changer. You could have a $40 site, but with us, if that's 2 adults and we have 6 children at $5 a night, that happens. For real, $5 a night per child per night. Wow, that changes everything. And so if you just quickly go, oh, $40 a night, that sounds great, sign us up, we want to show up, and then you show up with your big gaggle of kids or whatever you have. The next one, so that's our family, that's an important one. Another one that we need to ask is, what are your pet policies? Sometimes they're on the website and sometimes they're not. One of the things that we've gotten into is some places don't allow you to keep your dogs in the rig while you're gone. Well, that matters if you're hiking, if you're in national parks where your pets are not allowed. If you can't keep them in the rig, you're in big trouble. And so that has actually happened to us. We did not choose to go there, but we thought at least to ask the question. And that would have been terrible if we showed up with all of our kids to a fabulous national park for a week and we had to deal with that situation. Kenneling a dog, and they said that you have to kennel them. Also, ask if there's any fees associated with your pets. There once was one that was an $80 per time you're there for each pet. That would have been $160 for us. Ask those questions about your loved one, your little furry babies. Also, you need to ask the cancellation policy. It's COVID. You're going to come into times where you're going to need to change things. There are wildfires, not flowers. There are wildfires. There are also hurricanes and tornadoes. There is just sickness and family emergencies. Ask what the cancellation policy is so that you and they understand.
Because it's across the board. Like a lot of the little sand places that we talked about, those little stop-offs, you don't pay till you get there. They don't care. But a lot of your destination places,
they do care.
They do care. And so you really need to make sure you know what that is.
And sometimes they'll say they'll send it to you in a confirmation, but by that time, many times you've already put down a deposit. And
you want to know ahead of time.
You got to know ahead of time. So what are the cancellation policies? Also, what kind of discounts? What discounts do you take? Because some, especially Passport America, they may not be on their website, but if you ask them, then they are Passport America. Maybe military. Maybe you are AAA. There are lots of different ones. Good Sam's, Escapees. So make sure you ask how to get those good discounts, because you don't want to just ask about the fees.
If you don't ask, you're not going to get it.
That's right. So make sure that you ask about the discounts. Also, one that gets us almost every time is, What time is your check-in? What time is your checkout?
Yeah.
I will tell you, when you are full-timing, trying to get that worked out is difficult because you might have 11 o'clock checkout, and some of the state parks and COEs, the Corps of Engineers, their check-ins aren't till 4 or 5 o'clock. Well, you got to find something to do with your rig.
You can't be there till 4, and it's a 2-hour drive.
You don't know what to do with your rig. You got to spend some time in Walmart.
Yeah.
So, or maybe Cabela's or something like that. But it's important to know because, boy, then you're having to eat out.
Because I'll say that's the one biggest thing that is the least standard, the most across the board, just random. And so that is so important to ask at every single one. Okay, when's your check-in? When's your checkout?
Yes.
And then for us, a lot of times we'll just ask, well, what if what if we stay another hour? Well, that's no problem. There's nobody coming in. Or they'll say, well, it's $5 an hour if you stay. They'll have a policy on early check-in, late checkout, those kind of things. And so we've just had to do that sometimes, figure out how to manage that when there's those big gaps.
But it's really important. It's so important. The next one is to ask about vehicles. So we drive 2 different vehicles. It is important to ask that what do we do about extra vehicles? Because we often get charged for our extra vehicles. So that is not uncommon.
If you're one vehicle family, then you don't have to worry about that.
You don't have to worry about it. But if you do travel with 2, you do need to make sure that you kind of discuss that and what those extra fees.
Is there a place for our second vehicle?
Absolutely. And then at the end, what I usually will do is I'll circle back with them and I'll say, okay, so based on everything that you've told me, what would my nightly rate be?
Yeah.
It's hard to do math in your head when you're talking to 15 or 20 different people. And so I'll ask them, and they're always so willing to do that.
Yep.
So I'll say at the end, before we get off, can you help me just as I'm writing this down, what would my nightly fee be? We know what our cap is. We know when we can say yes, and we know when we have to talk. So there are some campsites that if it's a certain amount, I know I can make that reservation. I can put the money down. I can send that off. But there are some where I'm going to have a conversation with him, and we're going to have to really put pen to paper and decide if we're willing to do that. And so I would say kind of wrap it up with making sure you understand what your nightly rate is, including taxes or any fees, resort fees. Some of them have that. So there's lots of different nuances. And so these have been our top questions that we have found by trial by error that we wish that we'd had. And now I write them down, and then I make sure that I just go through each one of them and I just write all the answers down in my notebook. Then Jay and I, we discuss it, and then we put it in RVTripWizard, and that's where it stays, and that is when we kind of have our go-to. And so for me, this has been a lifesaver in order to make those reservations, especially when you're trying to make multiple reservations. And like Jay said, they're not always going to call you. They're not always going to be ready on the phone. Yeah. Lots of callbacks.
Some of them you can do online, but some of them you can't. And here's another little tip. We've found out that the online reservations are not always accurate. A lot of times we've gotten on, and online it said, nope, there's nothing available for you. We'll pick up the phone and call anyway.
Please do that.
And a lot of times, actually I would say the majority of the time, they've been able to squeeze us in. They'll say, well, this one does only fit 45 foot, but you can fit there and we'll let you park your car across the street.
That just happened to us,
or whatever that is. And so we would just say,
or they've had a cancellation.
Don't ever take the online as the last no. So this is our process. We hope that you found some stuff in here that's going to help you the next time that you make a reservation, hopefully help you avoid some of the stumbles that we had along the way as we learned all of this. And if you have another question that you think is super important, we would love to hear from you. It's great when we can act as a community to help each other. So down in that comment section, if there's a question that you think is super important, or was maybe super important to your family, that we need to add,
or
put it down in there.
Or just a tip that you have on reservations too. So if you've got something that you found that really works for your family or for you, please let us know, because we were always learning, and we would love to learn something new that might help us as we continue to route plan.
So that's it for this RV Family Life video. We hope you'll join us this Friday for our travel vlog. And if you haven't subscribed, we would love for you to do that. You can click right down there to subscribe. Or if you missed our last video, you can click right down there and check out. Until next time, we hope you go out and have some crazy fun with your crazy family.
Bye, guys.